Sí. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the International Congress of Young Researchers. I'm Alba Clavero, the director of the International Congress of Young Researchers, and I will be with you today. On this second day of expositions, we will do the second and the third presentation session. So let's start with our first speakers. They come from Georgia. Their project is digital image zooming system based on interpolation algorithms presented by Maria, Georgie, and Tornik. Thank you.
Hi. Unfortunately, one of our dearest friend and team member is Georgi Melikize is sick, so today he will not be attending this conference, and we will present our presentation on his behalf. Yes. Thank you.
Oh. Hello from Georgia, Georgian American High School. My name is Maria Nidens. And today we are presenting digital image zooming system based on interpolation algorithms. This project is dedicated to one of the most popular issues today, digital imaging. Digital image processing methods are widely used in security systems, education, and medicine. The aim of the project is to create digital image zoom software using non-adaptive interpolation algorithms. It is impossible to enlarge or reduce the matrix image without degrading the quality. The task is to make the quality of enlarged or reduced image as close as possible to the quality of original image. To achieve this, various methods are used, effectiveness of which depends on what algorithms will be used. We can represent each raster image as numerical matrix. If size of the image is n by n and matrix is denoted by symbol I, where the value of I and m equals to the value of the color of the pixel at field nm. We can give image presented this way to a zoom algorithm which will return new j image. Figure I gives us information about j's location. Therefore, we can formulate zoom task as follows. We have to find each unknown d-1 pixels among known pixels in J matrix, which is task of interpol. Every time when image is upscaled, each pixel is transferred to a bigger grid. There are empty places left, which can be filled with interpolation. Now we'll talk about, now we'll describe which methods we used. Nearest neighbor is the easiest method and requires least time in terms of computing. Only one pixel is involved in interpolation, so interpolation polynomial belongs to zero order. One easy method to describe the scale, double the scale of an image is as follows. We have to replace every pixel with 4 pixels, which will match the color of the former pixel. Resulting image will be twice the size of original image and will preserve every detail as well. However, human eye will perceive it as an image composed of colored squares and not as a whole image, in which colors are constantly transferred to each other.
How we can see the bilinear interpolation gives us a higher resolution than nearest neighbor interpolation. The bilinear interpolation is extension of an idea of linear interpolation. Suppose we want to find the value. Find the value of unknown f function at points x and y. It is assumed that we know the value of a function at 4 points.
Q11, Q12, Q22, and Q21.
First, we find the interpolation between points Q11 and Q21, and after between Q12 and Q22. After this process, we will know the approximate value of function at points R1 and R2. The linear interpolation of which we will use to find the value of the function at point x and y. Here is how the value of function at point P is obtained by linear interpolation. This allows us to approximate the value of P with coordinates x and y. This value denotes the color of pixel with the coordinates of P on the bitmap using RGB format.
Yes, now we're going to talk about even better interpolation called bicubic interpolation. Bicubic interpolation uses nearest 4x4 known pixels surrounding the unknown pixel. Similar to the linear method, interpolation is first done in one direction and then in the other one. Likewise, for a certain number of pixels, we get a 6th-order polynomial. Here we can see that here we will be able to find out the unknown pixel's approximated value between coordinates x1, y1 and x2, y1 using the interpolation function of two variables shown below. Yes. Now we will going to continue determining the unknown pixel's approximated value in this direction, and basically same goes here. Yes. Now we'll continue to determine the unknown pixel's approximated value in another direction, which means that interpolation function is working in another direction. Here. Now I'm going to speed up the process so we can finally see the completed bitmap. And finally we can see the completed finally we can see the completed bitmap where every unknown pixel space is now completely filled. Yes. As we can see here, the nearest neighbor interpolation has defined pixels, while bilinear interpolation has pixels that flow into each other smoothly, creating a gradient effect, though the image resulting from bicubic interpolation is much smoother and sharper than bilinear one, which makes it the standard for many image editing applications.
Now we will talk about the software implementation. Well, this is the interface of our local host site. Here you need to choose the desired zooming algorithm and zoom size, as well as upload the image to work with. After the process is done, you can see the result in the lower part of the screen. Here we can see that new image on the right is shown bigger, which is sign from photo viewing program that image's resolution is bigger. And if we go into details, it can be noticed that new image size is almost 10 times the original one due to the lack of the compression method usage, while resolution has, as expected, increased by 2. Our code is done on C# programming language. The program communicates with user using a web interface, which is written by JavaScript. JavaScript libraries, Bootstrap and jQuery. It gives us opportunity to create the application which has user-friendly visual side. Now we will talk about the most important part of our project, comparisons between our systems and existing programs' results.
Yes, first we will discuss the comparison between bicubic interpolation of our system and Photoshop. This is the original image. This is image magnified 2 times by our system using bicubic interpolation. This is image magnified 2 times by Photoshop using bicubic interpolation. And this is an image magnified 2 times. And this is the difference between Photoshop's bicubic interpolation and our one. This is, again, we will remind you of the original image. This is image magnified 2 times by our system using bilinear interpolation, and this is image magnified 2 times by Photoshop using bilinear interpolation. And this is the difference between Photoshop's bilinear interpolation and our one. Yes, as you can see, the difference between bicubic interpolation results is more visible than bilinear one, which means that our bilinear method is closer to Photoshop's than our bicubic. Yes. Again, we will remind you of the original image. This is image magnified 2 times by our system using nearest neighbor interpolation, and this is image magnified 2 times by Photoshop using nearest neighbor interpolation, and this is image magnified 2 times by Paint using nearest neighbor interpolation. This is difference between our nearest neighbor method and Paint's one. This is a difference between Photoshop's nearest neighbor and Paint's one. And finally, these are the two differences. And as you can see, they are practically identical. And this is the difference between Photoshop's nearest neighbor and our one. Yes. Also, to conclude the subject, from the differences shown between our systems and already existing programs' results, we can conclude that our system exceeds Paint's performance and equals to Photoshop's.
To summarize, we processed existing literature on digital processing methods, studied mathematical and numerical methods and algorithms of interpolation. Existing achievements can be improved. However, most of the task is completed, and the system with this data is almost equal to well-known programming packages used in digital technologies. In the future, the work on improving the system will continue. Several functions implemented with interpolation, like image rotation and cutting, will be added. This will significantly increase the capability of the application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Have you got any questions? Okay.
Is the project documentation online, or where can I find it?
It's not online yet because we are about to make even more. I mean, we're going to make it even better by adding cutting and rotation. Though you can get it by link, which we will send you when we get to the hostel.
Okay, thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't really understand how those dark images of quality differences really show anything to us. Could you please explain how they work, how they were made, and what exactly they show?
So, if I got the question correctly, you're asking that what difference was between our systems and already existing programs, and why did we create this, or?
Not really.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Could you please speak up?
You were showing us you remember the dark images of quality differences between several methods. How exactly were such images of the differences made, and what exactly do they show in terms of the quantity studied?
Now I got the question. Thank you. The dark images were made by basically excluding the pixels that were in the Photoshop's photos and ours. They were basically, these are the differences. So we excluded the pixels on one image. We basically excluded the pixels that were the same on both of the images, and the pixels that were left on the black image are showing the differences between the two.
So those were basically the images of the sort of the leftover pixels?
Yes, by excluding from one image to another. Like, if we excluded the same pixels from the two images, we would get the black image with these white lines, and those white lines show the differences between the two.
And they supposedly advocate for better quality of an image.
Yes, but the main purpose was to create a system that would be free for students, because as you know, Photoshop and Paint, we have to pay for them monthly, and for the students that don't have this kind of privileges, we created our system to help them. Plus, we said that our system exceeds Paint's performance, so it is not bad because it's free. It's actually pretty good, but it was made for the students that don't have the privileges to get the Photoshop and Paint.
Thank you, that's very insightful.
Yes.
Thank you for this presentation and on this topic that is definitely not trivial. I have two questions. The first one is, do you think that these methods could be used in biology microscopy images to
Yeah, of
increase?
course. As
Okay.
Maria said,
Yeah.
the digital image zooming is actually involved in medicine as well. So it could be used anywhere, basically, in our daily lives as well.
Great. And what resolution do you think that can be reached? Like in a biology image with conventional microscopy, do you think you could improve? Like what kind of resolution can you reach?
Yes, I feel like the improvement could be made, but not at the moment, because we're working on some other things. So in biology, I feel like it would be useful as if we could see the particles
Okay.
on the
That's good.
image. Yes.
Good. And thank you. And my last question is, when you compare the different methods, you compare the resolution. I'm not sure. I don't know. Okay. What is the observable you measure to compare the resolution? You showed qualitative comparison. What do you quantitatively measure to compare the different methods?
How did we compare it? Or could you please repeat it? I didn't hear
what-
the last part.
Yeah, when you compare the different methods, you show like qualitative comparison. But do you measure something quantitatively to compare? What do you measure? The resolution?
Well, we compared the resolution, as you've already
Okay.
said. We also compared the pixel numbers to prove that it was
Okay.
actually magnified 2 times. We also want to make sure that you know that there are differences between the images and also the differences between the algorithms we used, because as you know, the nearest neighbor interpolation is not the best. The bilinear interpolation is kind of medium, and to show that the bicubic is the best, we actually had the black images that showed the pixel differences between the two. So it had like 3 main purposes. One was to show that we can, that our system is as good as Paint's nearest neighbor. That's one. The second was to show that there are differences between the algorithms and the numbers. And basically, yeah, that was it.
Okay, okay. Thank you, you answered. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. In a few minutes, we continue with the other Georgian team, and we will put the presentation and we will continue. Thank you. Also, we have a second project made by the Georgian delegation, and it's made by Georgie, Nicolot, David, Nia, and they will present the project called Generalization of Cosine's Law for Areas of Regular Polygons. Thank you.
Hello, we are from Georgia, and today we will be talking about generalization of cosine's law for areas of regular polygons. And my name is Nia Gergeshelidze.
My name is David Mirzoyani.
And I am Georgi Shashiashvili. Let's start with an introduction. It is well known that sum of the areas of squares constructed on the legs of a right triangle equals to the area of a square constructed on hypotenuse, Pythagorean theorem. We prove that this property is also correct for any inside regular polygons constructed on the sides of a right triangle. We also prove that if there are inside regular polygons constructed on the sides of an arbitrary triangle, then there exists a formula similar to the theorem of law of cosine.
To prove this, we need to find the areas of regular polygons. We considered regular and-sided polygons and calculate their areas using formula of area of a triangle, where r is radius of circle circumscribed about a regular polygon. We show radius using a side of a polygon and substitute it in the formula of an area. Then we wrote down area for each of those regular polygons and introduced notation T. After simplifying, we substituted it in the formula of a Pythagorean theorem. As a result, we got a formula which is similar to Pythagorean theorem, but using areas of polygons.
So let's now consider an arbitrary triangle. Let's say that any n-sided regular polygons are constructed on the sides of arbitrary triangle. As we know, the relations between the sides of a triangle, arbitrary triangle, are given by a formula of law of cosine. So let's substitute the above formulas and put them in the law of cosine formula. And after simplifying it, we will take this formula, which is shown.
As for general case, regular polygons with different numbers of sides, m, n, and k, are constructed on the sides of an arbitrary triangle. We calculated areas for each polygons where we show the squares of the sides. If we substitute these formulas in the law of cosine, so we get this first formula, and by dividing it we get this formula, and then we get that formula by simplifying it.
So we got interested what we'll take on the right triangle case, so we have returned to it. And as we know, a cosine on 19 degrees equals to 0. So that part of formula is 0, and our formula will look like this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you guys for your attention.
Thank you very much. Anyone has questions? No? So now we will take a long break, over 30 minutes, I think, and we will continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Ew.
com vous dites ça, la...
Sorry?
C'est ça, c'est le...
Le nom du projet?
Non. La maquette, la maquette.
La maquette?
C'est ça.
Oui.
Ok.
So, please attention. We continue with the second presentation session, and the next presentation comes from Belgium and is made by Thomas and Amin, and the project is called Human Arm Regulator. Thank you.
So, hello everyone. Today we are here with Amin to present you our project, the Human Arm Regulator. This is intended for people with chronic tremors. Our goal is to find a solution to improve their daily lives without medicines. We all know that medicines have side effects, and we would like to avoid this as much as possible. That's why we created a physical project, and now I let Amin present you our project.
Hello everyone. As Thomas said, our project is for people with chronic tremors. So, okay, first of all, how did we do that? Firstly, we did some research on the origins of tremors. Indeed, we wanted to understand how, but especially why people tremble constantly. After some kinds of research, we found quite explicit information. Our body shakes constantly. They are said to be normal for the invisible shakes, like if you are cold or at the moments of stress. But in some people, the tremors are present during moments at rest. They are called pathologic tremors, and they are due of dysfunctions of the nervous system. There are a lot of types of tremors, but they still rare and unexplained. Okay, sorry, thank you. Then for the project, we had the idea to use gyroscopes. So gyroscopes, it's just like a spinning top. And when it is in motion, it tends to keep the orientation of its axis. Very light, this is not to wait for the patient. And we decided to fix our gyroscopes on a wooden frame with an angle of 120 degrees. We think that their weight can be neglected in theory. Okay. Now I'm going to let Tom explain you what problems did we encounter in our research.
In the first place, we wanted to create a project for people with Parkinson's disease, but after a lot of research, we noticed that the tremors in Parkinson's patients only occurred when they are at rest. Then, for the moment, scientists have no answer and no possible treatment. It was very difficult for us to find precise answers. We also started with police to create our project, but but after thinking about, we decide to use motors. They are easier to use. And that's all.
Okay, and finally some tools. Through our biology teacher, we are able to question a person with chronic tremors. And here are some questions. At the end of the day, do your arm muscles hurt? Or under what conditions can it bother you, for example, at work, while cooking? And their answers are respectively no hurts and every time when he cook, when he want to drink, when he want to do anything. Our goal is to find solutions for them, and it's just a prototype, but we want to improve for the future. Why not? And yeah, with a good material and a good budget. Thank you. If you have any questions, this is the moment. Oh man. Yes.
Thank you very much. Have you got any questions?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you a lot.
Sorry, just speak up, please.
I'm curious to know whether you have tested the efficiency of your apparatus on, well, real-life people with tremors yourselves, or are you relying on what has already been tested before you and examined before?
Actually, we didn't have the chance to test our project because this is just a prototype and it was really difficult to find a person. But for the future, if we can just improve the project, why not? Yes. Yes.
And how confident are you that your apparatus does help people with tremors?
Okay, can you just repeat your question, or someone can translate because I don't understand?
How confident are you that the machine works?
How what?
Confident.
Confident. Okay, thank you. In theory, we do a lot of research on this project to find some explication, and after, how can I say that? In theory, when you do that, when you attach the gyroscopes at 120 degrees, you can stop the shakes, okay? But we must test our projects in the future.
Okay, thank you. I just have one last question that came up to my mind since we were talking about it. When you're referring to 120 degrees, are you referring to the tilt of the machine or something else?
Because, how I said, when it is in motion, it tends to keep the rotation of the ask. So if you put your gyroscope like this, you can't move the gyroscopes, you know. And when you have 3 gyroscopes on your wooden frame, you can't move your arm. Do you understand?
Could you re-explain that, please? As far as I understand, the 120 degrees comes from the extent at which it rotates the hand.
Because when your arm shakes, it shakes just like this and like this. So when the gyroscopes, I will say it's my top anyway. When your gyroscopes are in motion, when they're put like this, okay, this is just a prototype, okay, okay. When it is in motion, you can't move your arm because this is going to stop the movement like this, and every angles can stop all the movements. Do you understand?
That was very insightful, but where does the 120 degrees come from? I'm not Frankly, I'm not an expert here,
120 degrees, this is the universal answer.
for what?
For when you because when we want to use just 3 gyroscopes, and when you have 3 gyroscopes, you must use just 120 degrees. If I use, for example, 4 gyroscopes, I must do 90 degrees. You know, this is just a calcul. I can say that. Yes, yes, it's a circle. So I must have 130 degrees every time when you have 3 gyroscopes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. No? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will pass the floor to the Luxembourgese delegation in a few minutes. Thank you. Sí, es bastante más. So we will continue the presentation. The next speaker is from Luxembourg, and his name is Daniel, and its project is called An Investigation of Musical Consonant and Dissonance. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm going to be presenting my project today on consonants and dissonance. And before I start, it may seem like quite a random subject to choose, so I'm going to give some background information about why I chose this subject. So I've been doing music for about all of my life, and 2 years ago I started composition. And composition involves the usage of consonant intervals and dissonant intervals. And basically what these are intervals which sound good or pleasing to the ear, which are consonant, and intervals which don't sound good, which are dissonant. So, first I'm going to start off with a little test. And we're going to see whether you can tell the difference between a constant interval and a distant interval. Okay, so I'll play the first interval. And the second one. So, which one do you think sounds better? First or second? Well, put your hand up if you think the first one sounds better. And if you think the second one sounds better? Yeah, okay. So, what I just played you are two different intervals. One being a minor second, which is a very distant interval, and the other being a perfect fifth, which is a constant interval. But what makes them so different? Because when you look at the list of intervals which are constant and the list of intervals which are distant, it seems quite random as to which ones fall under distance and which ones fall under constants. And so I wanted to find a more mathematical ranking of these intervals. And what I found is that it's based on frequency ratios. So if you look, a constant interval will have a simple frequency ratio, such as 2 to 3, which is the perfect fifth. And a distant interval will have a more complex frequency ratio, which is, for example, 32 to 45. So next, just to give you some, just to tell you a bit about how sound actually works. Sound isn't, well, you can have it, but normally it's not a pure sine wave, but rather it's made out of multiple frequencies, so multiple sine waves. So this is a middle C, the 262 hertz. But what it actually does, it gives you, sorry. What it actually does is you're hearing a frequency of 262 hertz with another frequency above it with double the frequency of 523, and then another one with 1046, and it continues infinitely. And then, well, you can't really see it, but instead of a pure sine wave, you have one which looks a bit more irregular and complex. So, now if we look at the harmonics of a constant interval, for example, we see that the middle C, C4, has the fundamental frequency of 262 hertz, then double 523 hertz, and then 3 times, which is 785 hertz. And then you do the same for G4, which is the note above it. And what you notice is that the frequency 3 and the frequency 2 have basically the same frequency. And so that makes our brain likes this. Yeah. Whereas for a distant interval, when you do the same thing, you see that the third frequency and the second frequency here, it's 785 hertz and 740 hertz, which is close enough for our brain, well, basically for a distant frequency, it has to be in a certain range where it's not too close, where we can't tell the difference, but it's also not too far that they just sound completely different. And the reason for the frequency ratios is because the first time where you actually have constants in this interval is in the 45th frequency of C4 and the 32nd frequency of F sharp 4. So that's why you have the frequency ratio 32 to 45, which is a complex one. And now I'm going to talk about a bit about Fourier analysis and why, for example, this frequency 32 and frequency 45 are less important than the first 3 frequencies. So what you find is that basically Fourier analysis is when you have a complex sound wave, like we had here, and you actually split it into regular sine waves. And when you do that, you see that it has a peak in like the first one especially, and then the second one is important, third one. So these are the frequencies. So the first frequency is important, second one less so, and third one even less so. And then after that, they really don't make a difference. So that was basically the mathematical part of it. But it still doesn't make sense about why our brain would care about having, you know, like dissonant and frequency ratios and all of that. It seems quite random. So I wanted to see what parts of our brain were stimulated when we actually hear dissonance compared to consonance. And so what I wanted to do is actually use an fMRI scan to see the change in like blood flow when a dissonant interval is heard compared to a consonant interval, and then you'd be able to locate the parts of the brain which are stimulated. But this isn't possible because I'm a student and it's a very expensive procedure. So instead, I had to use research, which is like a bit less certain. It's more like guessing. And what I found is that when I look at like colors, for example, colors when you see colors, they play a big part on the limbic system, which is our emotional system. And it provokes like emotional and behavioral responses. And there's two parts of the limbic system which are particularly involved, one being the nucleus accumbens and the other being the amygdala. So, the nucleus accumbens is particularly stimulated when we hear consonant intervals. And what the nucleus accumbens does is that it secretes dopamine, and this gives us very pleasurable sensations. And it's also involved in stuff like motivation. So if our brain wants us to do something, it will affect the nucleus accumbens and then make us want to do it more. So we want to hear more consonants. Whereas the amygdala is stimulated when you hear dissonance, and that stimulates the like nervous system, and you feel quite agitated. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. So now I wanted to have like a reason of like why has our brain developed this emotional response to consonance and a negative emotional response to dissonance? And like most things, it's probably evolutionary. That's like when in nature, when you had like dissonance, it would be related to a sense of threat and danger. And so in order to survive, we developed this function, which is that when we hear dissonance, we get the sensations of the fight or flight reaction. And so then we know that, you know, something bad is happening. Okay. Musicology in general is like a musicology, which is the relation of maths and music, is quite an unresearched subject. And music in general, it's very scientific, and there's so much maths, from like basic maths to very advanced maths involved in it. However, it's not very well researched, probably because it's not very useful. But more so that people more see it as like an emotional thing and not so much as a scientific thing. But what you actually find is that it's all science. So this meant that all the research about music is very hard to find. It's very hard to find good sources. And especially in stuff like consonance and dissonance, it's hard to find evidence. And then also the problem with the evolutionary thing, there's a very big debate in musicology about the thing of having an innate, so you're born with this sense that dissonance is bad and you're born with the sense that constants is good, and or that it's just developed by listening to like Western music and stuff like this. And in the future, what we could do to advance this is to have just more research involving music, because there's a lot of room for advancement, and maybe also to do an fMRI of the limbic system. Yeah. So in summary, there's three main parts to constants and distance. The first one is the mathematics. The second one is the limbic system and its relation to emotion. And the reason for this is probably evolutionary. Okay, thank you for listening.
So thank you very much. Have you got any questions? Yes?
Thank you, Daniel, for this presentation. I love music, so I'm very interested in your presentation. I have a question. I really don't know the answer. It's just like open question. In some countries, in some other cultures, they have a lot of dissonances in their traditional musics, but in the end, the total sounds good, even if there are a lot of dissonances. What would you think, if you have ever thought about this, that could be that the result sounds good, but with a lot of dissonances in the music? Have you already heard this kind of music?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, in music, a piece involving just constants would actually seem very like boring, because well, it's the main thing we do in composition actually. Whenever you have a distance, it's used to create like a feeling of like suspense, kind of. And then the constants normally like resolves this tension. Mm-hmm. So in order to, just because you have lots of consonants within a piece doesn't make the piece actually sound good.
Okay.
You need to have like a mixture of both. But the thing about the different cultures and other cultures having more distance and other cultures having like less distance, it's kind of the thing, it's part of the debate about whether it's like innate
yeah.
or whether it's developed.
Okay.
Because what you find is that not everyone's perception of constants and distance is the same. Like for us, we might find some intervals constant, while others may find them distant. So it's still debated whether it's like completely just in our brain, or whether it's just from listening to music and then you develop the sense.
It could be like one part innate and one part cultural.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I also have a question, even though not as colossal as the question of the previous speaker. I'm just interested about the units in which you measure the frequency of a sound wave. What exactly do they represent?
The frequency is measured in hertz.
Oh, yes. What do they represent? What do they stand for?
What does hertz stand for?
Yeah. What exactly does it measure?
Well, hertz. Wait, can I go back? Just to the picture with the waves. Here, well, next one. It's hard to see, but basically, if the frequency is higher, then the waves are like closer together. Whereas if the frequency is lower, they're further away. And basically what frequency is related to pitch. If you have a lower frequency, you have a lower pitch. If you have a higher frequency, you have a higher pitch. And if you want the formula, it's like velocity equals frequency times like wavelength, I think, or something like that.
Anyway. Oh, I see. So those are units of arrays. basically. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, it's also frequency, the Hertz thing I forgot to mention. It's basically the amount of like waves you have in like a given period of time.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Have you got another questions? No? So thank you very much, and take this. Thank you very much for all the presentation. We have finished the second presentation session. They were amazing, and we have thought us that we learn something new every day. And we will have the third presentation session on the afternoon. Thank you. Guys, now we have free time until 1:30, and at 1:30 we